Welcome everybody to the third episode of the Paul and Pals IG Live show. I'm your host, Ponyboy Paul, for those that aren't familiar. So our third, congrats, our third guest is Josh Kaplan. And I actually met Josh when I was a freshman at the University of Michigan. All my Michigan Wolverines, let me get a go blue in the chat. And it was crazy. We actually lived in the same dorm hallway. I think he was a couple of doors down from me freshman year. And I always thought he was a really cool guy. We didn't keep in touch that much after that freshman year, but I always kind of with social media, it's kind of easy to stay in touch. And seeing him on social media, I kind of saw that he was actually with, the Morning Brew. If you guys aren't familiar, we're going to talk about that. And I just thought it was really cool. But I'm going to let him tell his story and say what's good. So without any further ado, let me bring in Josh. Hey, what up, Josh?
Hey, what's up?
I'm good, bro. How you living, man?
I'm doing well. How's my audio? How's the connection?
Hey, you sound good. I think we sound. If we sound good, let us know. If we sound bad, we can't really do much. But I got my Wi-Fi connected. I got my Xfinity. Shout out Comcast. But yeah, let's start it off, bro. How you doing right now? What's up?
I'm doing well. I'm actually, we were talking, I'm out in Colorado.
Okay.
Still working Eastern hours, which means that I wake up early, stop working early, and I got to go out for a quick hike this afternoon. So,
Exactly.
you
Do
know,
you live in Colorado, or you're there right now, right? For I think for
I
COVID?
usually I'm in New York City with the rest of the team. That's where I've lived since we graduated Michigan.
Okay.
But now I'm out here and everything's pretty crazy out in the world. But fortunately, I'm able to enjoy it out here.
It's very crazy right now. And before we get into your story and all that, how are you currently doing right now with the whole COVID situation and just life in general?
Uh, I think again, like I'm very gracious. Like all things considered, I'm doing pretty well off, right? I still have a job. My family is safe.
Mm-hmm.
So things are pretty crazy out there, but luckily I'm all right. Sometimes I want to go out and I'm feeling a little cooped up, but I think all things considered, it could be a lot worse. So I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, so I think we're all kind of very privileged with able to do this right now. But one of the reasons I kind of started this thing was because I see people kind of doing things, and I think it's really cool to highlight people like us in our age range that are doing the not norm. So I wanted to kind of get into your story first. Let's kind of talk how you got there. So we met at Michigan, but what was your major? What's your background?
Before we jump all the way into that, I wanted to thank you for having me on. I was actually forwarding the show over to the rest of my podcast team, and I thought it was really creative, and the format and all of the artwork and all the different parts of this are really, really cool. So I'm happy that you reached out to me. I know you were saying we haven't really caught up since we were hallmates, but I remember we always kind of bump into each other and say hi and catch up real quick.
Okay. I appreciate that, man. I mean, it's just trying to do what I can do, So yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, going back to your story, Michigan, all that stuff was good.
Yeah. So I am originally from Miami, grew up in Miami, went to Michigan, had a great time. We can talk about more about my Michigan experience, but I studied business. I was in a bunch of other clubs and other things. And along the way, I knew I wanted to go into business of some sort. Had no idea, but I've always liked tech and startups and all these different things. And then somehow through one of my good friends from home, I ended up meeting Austin and Alex, who formed Morning Brew, who founded it while we were on campus. So I'm sure you remember the early days of the newsletter when it was what we've built over the past couple of years. But I started to help them out a little bit toward the end of school. I went into consulting for a year, was flying around the country every week. And then at a certain point, Austin and I were talking, and he convinced me, or I convinced him, that the story is a bit gray now, how it actually happened. But before I knew it, I was working full-time with Morning Brew. So over the past year and a half, 2 years or so, I've been in a very fortunate position where they've given me a lot of autonomy to go and launch new products. So when I got there, get into this, it was just one newsletter, and we were figuring out how to turn the product into a real business with multiple products, and we've done a lot since then.
So was it a formal? Was it just hey, I know you joined my team, or was it kind of they made you apply and say, hey, Josh, I can do this, this, and this? How did that happen?
There was no application. There was one hike that Austin and I went on. It must have been the summer of like 2018 or something like that, where he was talking about all these ideas and all these things and where he wanted to take the company. And I could not fathom who he would bring in to help him execute on these very vague ideas. It's relatively, it's possible, and he had been doing it, hiring writers and salespeople and marketers, and found some really cool people that I still work with today that are some of my best friends. But I think for him to find somebody that had some experience with the business and understanding of where to take it and kind of just figure things out, there's no application. There's like, hey, like let's just figure out where to take this company, jump in, do some stuff.
So what year did y'all really start? Like what? Because I know we went to school 2013 through 2017. So when did it officially become a thing?
The first newsletter that Alex ever sent was in 2015, and that was just to a couple friends about. It was a PDF about yesterday's business news. It was called The Market Corner. There was a bear and a bull that he took from somewhere on the internet and hacked together, and would just send it out. And more people would say, "Hey, can you forward it to me? Can you add me to this email list?" Because he was making it useful for other students on campus like us to get internships and full-time jobs in finance and consulting, but mostly finance. That was 2015, and then since then it's just inch by inch grown over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember in one of my classes, I think it was like a Spanish 2 class back in Michigan. And we had to like present on stuff or talk about something, but explain it all in Spanish. And, one of my classmates talked about the Morning Brew. It was weird. And at that time, it wasn't like blowing up yet, but it was like, you like, oh, what's the Morning Brew? I heard about it. And so like the fact that you guys are at this point where you guys are, we're going to talk more about what the podcast is for, but you guys are really doing big moves. So it's really cool to see where it was and see what it's at now. And I'm assuming you guys have a ton of a pathway. And one note, so, talking about the Morning Brew, I want to give a shout out to you. So for this episode's raffle, we're actually going to be giving one lucky viewer their choice of any item on the crew website. So like basically what you guys can do, I have it in my story right now. Just scroll through it. And feel free to check out the website and see any of that. You have the chance to win it. But to win it, you do have to actually listen to the episode and actually answer 4 out of 5 questions we're going to post tomorrow night correct. So tune in, take notes, whatever you want to do, but we'll see where it goes. So I want to appreciate you, Josh, for willing to do that. I don't know if you're losing too much money on it, but, it's something.
No, it's good for us to get more mugs and T-shirts out there. But was that your cue for me to embed some really hard pieces of information throughout this?
So I'll tell you how the first raffle ever happened in my first episode. I was kind of like, oh, you guys are involved in, use phones. Like, it would be dope if somebody could get something from it, right? So I was just like, yo, like, and it's 2 hours before the show started. I'm like, yo, what can we do? They're like, oh, what if we just give something away, but like, make them at like the discount, right? So it happened, and then it just became a thing. So it's optional, whoever I'm going to interview. I don't want to force them. You have to give something, but I think it's really cool that, people are willing to do it. So I appreciate you for that, man.
Totally.
Yeah. And then now for the actual, I want to give an explanation, like a very brief overview. So first, what is the Morning Brew?
Morning Brew is a new media company that is fully focused on empowering the modern business leader. So people like us that are trying to make it out there where we want to succeed. It's mostly business oriented. It's all business oriented. We start off with one daily business newsletter that is delivered straight to your inbox via email. And it recaps yesterday, whatever happened in the business world. We just send that 6 times a week to about 2.1 million people right now. It's grown a lot over the past couple of years.
Okay, big flex.
we like, and now we're growing into a few different areas, into podcasting, into other types of business content that's not exactly news, and also trying to create little hubs for particular types of audiences. So we have retail brew, we have emerging tech brew for those types of professionals, and we're also launching marketing brew come June. So it's another thing that I'm working on for anybody that works in marketing, advertising, or brand, something that can be a one-stop shop for anything when you're relating to the business world.
If y'all hear that, if y'all got the marketing skills, hit up Josh, yo. And you kind of mentioned it briefly. So you mentioned the podcast. Now, the podcast is called, can you describe the podcast and how that came to be?
Podcast is called Business Casual. It's our first podcast. We've got a lot coming out within audio over the next bit. But when we looked at the newsletter, we said the newsletter does a great job of keeping you up to date in 5 minutes or less. You wake up in the morning, you read the newsletter, you keep going on with your day. And we said, we want to go a level deeper. We want to talk more about these stories, and we want to go straight to the source. We want to talk to people behind the news. We didn't want to just copy the newsletter. A lot of people said, why don't you listen to the Morning Brew? And we felt like it was copying it a bit too much. So instead of copying the same value proposition, we decided to create an interview show. So twice a week, Kinsey, who is the host of the show, her and I created the show together. She interviews business leaders about what she thinks are the most important business questions going on over a certain time period. So we try and stay very relevant. We stay and try and curate the best, most engaging guests, and package it in a very easy way. We've learned a lot over the course of making this podcast. Crazy world out there right now in audio and types of things, live shows as well. But it's been a great way to extend beyond newsletters.
Okay, that's dope. Yeah, and then even going back to that, so I got some podcast stuff coming up pretty soon. I'm gonna announce that in a couple of days, weeks. I don't know yet. But I actually saw your article on, or more of a Twitter thread on Twitter, obviously, and you kind of broke down how you guys were tasked with making a podcast, and then you did it. And I really like that tweet. I actually saved it in my bookmarks to refer to later. But when you were making that, what was the process? How did that actually happen?
Oh, wow. So about this time last year, we had just launched Retail Brew. So it was our second new newsletter. And we came back to the table and we said, what's next? And we wanted to go into podcasting. We wanted to do it, but nobody on the team had any experience in the field. Not a single bit. There were, I think, still 15 of us on the team. So we were growing and everything else was going great. And I think a finger was pointed at me, or I think a finger was pointed at me, and they said, Josh, go figure out how to start a podcast. I said, I've got no idea. I'm not the next year of my career on something that I have no idea. I never intended to be in media, but somehow, whatever. It was a good challenge. It was really exciting. It was working with Kinsey, and we decided to jump in and figure it out. So for a couple of months, we knew absolutely nothing, but we used our network. We went through Twitter. We talked to as many people as possible about designing the show, about figuring out how to monetize, how to grow it, how to brand it, all the things from scratch. We just figured time, and we just asked a shit ton of questions.
Okay.
And notes all along the way. I was building my book of knowledge. I was writing. So when it came to launch, I said, here's what I learned. And I've now become a bit more opinionated in the space. But at that time, I was very open-eyed and fresh to the industry and thought that I could make a pretty good attempt at making a good show. So actually today we crossed 3 million total downloads.
Easy. You're dropping the big numbers, bro. You're talking millies out here. That's dope. And so you guys have had some notable guests, for example, I think y'all had the CEO of Complex, I think a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week.
Yeah.
What would you say are some notable guests that, you think people go check out that episode right now?
If you're into big names, Mark Cuban, Barbara Corcoran, we've got 2 sharks on the show. We talked to the Fat Jewish. That was one of my favorite episodes ever. So we've gotten Ariana Huffington. So there are a bunch of big names that we've also been fortunate enough to get to talk to. But some of my more favorite episodes are with names that you might not have heard of. So this week we released 2 episodes about food that were interconnected a bit, where we talked to a bunch of chefs and restaurateurs, the founder of Sweet Green, the founder of Red Rooster and Field Trip in Harlem, and our storytelling and our way of finding really engaging people to have the best perspective on that topic are some. Matthew Ball for Streaming Wars. There's a bunch that I would suggest, but I think off the top of my head, those are my favorite. And really, where you haven't heard of the name are the ones where I think we do a better job.
I see. I like that. I mean, I think it's dope that you guys have that access, but obviously with the Morning Brew, it's a thing. People will refer to the Morning Brew, or they say, I read this. What's the process of actually reaching out to CEOs and getting them to tune in for an hour or whatever?
Oh, we've tried everything. There's no single solution.
Y'all sliding DMs or what?
We DMs all the time. DMs are social media, especially now when all these big time founders and CEOs are staying at home all day. That has been one of the biggest points for us getting these big names as of recent. but sliding into DMs, asking for a connection, going through their PR, going through an advertiser, because some of these companies have advertised, we say, hey, we sold ads to you. Can we get put in touch with the rep for the founder of this company? There are a million different ways in which we've gotten in touch. The whole team throughout Morning Brew always contributes, saying, hey, I've got a friend that works at this company. Can you get them on? Or somebody, the other day, my friend, one of my friends from Michigan, who was a freshman year friend, she worked at Darktrace, and she was like, hey, and I said, hey, can I get your CEO on? She's got to be the best person in cybersecurity to talk to them. And she said, sure, no, in touch. So it's a number of ways.
That was dope. I think it's really cool when at the end of the day we realize that, whatever your title, you're just a person, right? And obviously you might be a little bit harder to contact than most. The value of being able to speak to somebody on a real basis and actually get them to talk as you would just talk to any normal person, I think is very valuable. And in this day and age, I think being as very straightforward is really the move, right? So I guess, what do you guys think about the fact that, I think, how often are you trying to drop, I think, 1 episode a week, right? Or is it 2?
We just moved up to 2 episodes a week.
We moved up to 2. So with that amount of activeness, how often are you guys actually recording? Is it the day before you drop an episode? Is it like weeks in hand, or how's that happening?
It's not as clean as like some weeks it's 3 interviews or 4 interviews. We could go a whole week without recording. Sometimes we turn around in a day. Other times we might see a particular event happening a month from now and say, hey, we want to record it, take our time to produce it, and then release it in a month. So we're still testing things out. We're new to it, but there's no real formula for how early or often we record.
Got you. And the reason I'm asking, because I've noticed that, like, you had, I think when the COVID stuff first started, you brought on people that could talk about it in their realm and how it affects, let's say, cybersecurity or business sales and all of that. So it seems like you guys are trying to be on whatever is trending and address it in a business aspect. So is that what you feel like is really where your I guess your strengths are?
I think so. I'm glad you pointed out when COVID started to pop up, because before that we were once a week, and when everything started to go crazy, Marilyn and Kinsey, Marilyn's the producer of the show, the 3 of us said, there's a lot of big questions that people have right now, and we really want to answer them, and we know who we want to talk to, so we know the questions, we know the people. Let's work a little bit more over the next couple of weeks to get those questions answered. So that's actually what pushed us into twice a week territory. And then, as things have started to settle down, we started to question ourselves, should we go back to once a week? Should we slow down? And we actually like putting out 2 episodes a week and being in that news flow. It allows us a few more opportunities to be that much more relevant. So I enjoy it.
Gotcha. That's dope, man. Yeah, keep it up. I mean, I think one thing I've realized just from with COVID is that you get to a point where you want to do something, right? And then it's a matter of, like, can you keep up that consistency after the hype dies down or the emotion goes away? So I think I'm curious to see how this affects things for you guys. But I forgot to mention this to anybody watching. So if you guys want, you guys can ask questions right there in that question feature to the right of the comments. I'm gonna kind of go in and out of them, but I think we got one right now, actually, if you're down to answer them.
Of course.
Okay, baby Nietzsche, the first cue.
Who writes Emerging Tech Brew, and how'd you decide to bring it out? Ryan writes Emerging Tech Brew. He is the man. It's really fun working with him.
And what's Emerging Tech Brew for the non-Morning Brew readers?
Emerging Tech Brew is our first extension of Morning Brew. So Morning Brew is daily business news. Emerging Tech Brew is emerging tech news 3 times a week, same newsletter model, right? Ryan injects his own humor, his own voice. He takes a few liberties that we don't take in the daily Morning Brew newsletter that make it a bit special. So if you're interested in tech, you should definitely be reading that as often as possible. It was our first extension of Morning Brew. So that was the first thing that came out of that initial whiteboarding session that said, what type of media company do we want to become? And we want to be more specific to particular people's interests. So now we have a little cluster that's all about tech. He put out a 5G guide last week. He's been doing webinars and digital events. He's great.
5G?
5G. So if you have any,
and for all you conspiracy theorists, go read that. Go read that article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't know about how it's gonna, impact you in whichever way science wants you to believe. Anti-conspiracy theory at Morning Brew. We'll put that down. So as far as Brandon, he was actually in Texas when we found him. A friend of mine connected me to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he trusted me to be like, hey, we're just going to make a newsletter. Like, want to join the team and write something? And he was like, sure, let's figure it out. And then we did, and we launched it over a year ago.
That's dope, man. Let's keep it moving. Got some more questions coming in. Okay. It's a good question.
What makes a good podcast host? From Sebi Lozano, my friend. What makes a good podcast host? We talk about this a lot. Kinsey's very open to feedback, so it's very easy to talk to her about what makes a great. I think what makes Kinsey a great host for this particular show, and I think different people are better for certain types of shows. You're this show, maybe you're not great for a different type of show. Who knows? But for the interview show that we're looking at, Kinsey is always very, very prepared. She's very polite and knowledgeable on the subject. So she knows how to lead people into the conversation. She knows where she wants to take it because she's prepared, and she can address most of what the speaker is talking about because she's so read up. From there, it's her making references and her explaining things that might not make sense to the typical person. We're talking again on cybersecurity, where there's a lot of jargon, a lot of hard things to understand. So Kinsey has a great ear for saying, if I hear a certain word that I need to actually explain as I say the next thing, I'm going to embed it in the next phrase. So I think she's amazing at that. She's amazing at asking the question that you might be asking in your brain, but then also being conscious of the clock and making sure that she covers what she wants to cover within the hour that we have reserved with the particular person. I could probably go on and on. I'm like I think that I'm her biggest fan, but for the particular show, that's what I think makes a good host. You got to be also engaging and entertaining and read people. So nothing that is rocket science.
Cool. And going off of that, I know you guys are in the podcast space. You're always looking at what's going on. So, recently Joe Rogan just signed a, over $100 million deal with Spotify, where he's going to be exclusive to Spotify starting 2021, I believe. And how has seeing that news made you guys maybe change your strategy or look into different things?
Oof. I'm a little bit scared to be completely.
Very funny.
So when we entered podcasting, which was, again, only a year ago, we liked it for a lot of the same reasons that we liked email. It's open, it's distributed, you can go direct to the person receiving it. You're sending an email, you can go from a Gmail to a Hotmail to an Outlook. If you're in podcasting, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, whatever. There's a lot of great independence that comes with that, where you can monetize on your own. You can own the distribution, and you know who's listening and how often, and there's nobody sitting in between. There's no Facebook in between. There's no network CBS in between. It's very easy to manipulate, which is great for us because we don't want to have to pay a platform in order to participate. Spotify is now investing so much in the technology, so it's a great user experience. It's great at recommending new shows to listen to, and they're now buying a lot of content that you can only listen to on Spotify, like Joe Rogan, like The Ringer, like Gimlet, which is another production house. If they become Netflix, where you're listening to Spotify and not watching cable or not listening to open podcasts, and it's harder to get advertisers, it's harder to get discovered, we then are going to have to pay Spotify to play. Now, they've been nothing but nice to us. We've got a bunch of friends there, which are
another flex.
No, but this is how it goes, because they've got a whole team set up that's reaching out to content creators and trying to help everybody win. I think that they really do have a lot of great plans that are going to help a lot of people. My concern is that nobody else is buying content and nobody else is really investing in technology in the right way. Who else is going to buy Joe Rogan? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I'm concerned, is because there's only one major player. It's not Hulu, Netflix, HBO, yada, yada, yada. It's only Spotify and audio. So that's why I'm concerned. But the Joe Rogan thing's awesome.
I'm curious to see what happens. I think the big thing for me is that, Spotify was willing to kind of get in the ring and say, F Apple. You know, we're gonna take all, because he was like I think he's number one on Apple Podcasts. So like to take that amount of, you know, revenue away from them is gonna be interesting. YouTube as well. And, you know, they're trying to get into the video space. But yeah, that's a very good response. We'll see where they go. Let me get some more questions ready for you. Okay. What is the end goal of the company? Most companies either sell or go public. Is there a plan or goal of either of these?
That's
you
a tough.
Want to know the business plan?
That's big. I don't know the answer. I'm not the co-founder of the company. It's Austin and Alex. They make decisions like this. Right now, our goal is to build a very profitable business on our own. Media, you see a lot of bad news in media right now with a lot of layoffs, with a lot of companies going under, which is really, really unfortunate. And I think part of it is because these companies took venture capital money and were forced to grow really fast in ways that might not have been that intelligent.
Shout out WeWork.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. Like that we're forced to grow.
Yeah.
So instead, we're trying to go a bit slower, a bit more steady, and do it with our profits. So generating revenue today, using that revenue to invest in tomorrow, and owning the whole company for the time. So I can't really speak for Austin and Alex, but whenever we talk about our future plans, it's about how do we build with what we have.
You might need to get them on the show next, huh?
You should. They're great at this. They've got a lot more experience.
You're doing great, man. And going back to that, my own question is, you mentioned, you know, you guys are trying to be profitable. Like, how do you guys make money if all I have to do is sign up for a free newsletter?
We sell ads.
Okay. It seems like that's where a lot of tech companies make their money, but explain that for the people that don't know.
Yeah, so in every newsletter, there is 1 to 4 advertisements. We've got a sales team of about 18 now, I think, that spend all their time monetizing the newsletters and the podcast. So they make all these connections out of the industry, and we put ads in between every 15 minutes in the podcast, and then a couple each newsletter. That's how we make money right now. Gotcha. I will caveat that by saying one of our big goals is to add other revenue streams that allow us to make money beyond advertising. Our perspective is it's not a safe future if we're only relying upon one source of money.
That's a good point, man. Got to diversify them income streams.
Yeah.
Another question for you. Shout out Juan.
What's my personal favorite podcast? One you're unaffiliated with. Okay. How much time do we have?
We got time.
Okay. There are obviously a bunch that I like. I really like, for a lot of this, I mean, what I think about a lot on the business side is this strategy, technology, where these things are going. And there's a fantastic podcast called Exponent. It's by Ben Thompson and Stratechery. And that's where I get a lot of great information from. But I would say right now I'm listening to a lot more fun shows that aren't like productive, which I think is probably better actually. One is called The Left Right Game, which is by Q Code Media, and basically they make really cool podcasts in hopes that they get produced into TV shows or movies. So the sound is very immersive, the storytelling is really thought out, it's very professional. So I really, really like that. And then also Oh Hello, which is Nick Kroll and John Mulaney's podcast out of their fictional characters, is a hilarious show. So I think especially now during quarantine and work from home, I'm trying to listen to more fun stuff than just work stuff.
I feel that.
I've been filling my time with. But if you ask me on like a given week or month, that answer is completely different.
Yeah, I've been listening definitely to more podcasts and songs right now. So definitely, you know.
What are you listening to?
What am I listening to? Yes, I think I have some dailies, and then I have those weeklies that you're kind of waiting on. So for me, it's a mix of probably 2 or 3 dailies. So I like Robin Hood Snacks for their very easy to digest, obviously, you know, business news. I don't know if that's a conflict with you guys. And then I got the Breakfast Club. So I like them just for regular pop culture updates. And then I also like Marketplace with Kai Rizdal. I really like how he's just very straightforward and just telling what's going on. But they also kind of like go out of their way to really interview people that are affected by certain things because of the economy. So I like to stay up to date on that stuff. daily. In terms of weekly, I'm a big fan of Brilliant Idiots. That's Andrew Schultz, the comedian, and Charlamagne the God, also a host of The Breakfast Club. I like their hilarious take on just anything, right? It's just they'll be very intellectual about something, but then other times they just say whatever. So I think it's kind of cool to mix that realness with we joke a lot, you know what I'm saying? So that's really my vibe.
Yeah, it's a good balance. It's tough. It's fun.
Okay, and then we got some people dropping their favorite podcasts. We got some more questions for you, bro. Let's see here.
I think Charlamagne the God is going to go to Spotify exclusive sooner rather than later.
I'm curious to see where they go. They've definitely been hinting at some moves, but I don't know. I think he's always liked the ability to not be controlled by just one thing, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, next question from my little brother Peter. What has been the most impactful piece of advice you've received working with the Morning Brew? Yo, Peter, you gotta work on that, bro. Come on, man. I'm telling mom. But yeah, what you got?
Most impactful piece of advice. Austin says this a lot. We talk about this a lot. Where we go, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. So like things get tough. We don't know what we're doing. We have no idea how to do most of what we're doing. It's our first time, but we always go like, if it were easy, and it just kind of motivates us to be the first ones, or just to do it because nobody else will. So it kind of keeps us motivated and keeps us going.
I see. Word. That was funny. We got a question from the boy Joe. What up, Joe?
How has COVID less commuting impacted our viewership? Oh, I was just talking to my team, and we were saying, how high do we think the numbers would be if we were all commuting still? They're definitely down. We are, now that we're putting out 2 episodes a week. Now that we're getting these big names, we have sustained what we were doing prior to COVID, like at the same downloads per episode. So we're doing well. We exist. But instead of it looking like really steep on the growth side, it's just like a little bit up. So it's not great. I really do think that if we were commuting, the show would be doing a lot better. So I'm excited to go back to normal life at some point.
And let me ask you a question just personally. Do you feel there's a point where too much content can hurt you, or do you think that just people just are not in the mood to really listen to your stuff right now because of what's happening?
I think it's hard to listen right now. I think it's kind of a weird thing to do, to just sit around and listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
I find myself walking or doing laundry or cooking or something, but the commuting was the bulk of when I listened, and the bulk of when I think other people listen. So instead of a podcast, you're consuming content, but it's video, it's something else. So I think there's a difference. Too much content. We want to create a habit. We want people to feel like they're a part of the ride, where they're listening twice a week and they're up to speed on everything. If we start putting out 6 episodes and you can only listen to 2, then we think that we're overloading it, and you're going to lose us because you can't keep up to speed. That's how we think about it.
Gotcha. And you kind of mentioned earlier that you guys luckily haven't been affected by the layoff, because a lot of companies are going through that. Do you think there's a point that COVID could affect you guys as a team, where you might have to be like, hey, we can't have this many people in sales or marketing? Like, I know you can't speak to that, not being the founder, but do you feel like that could potentially happen?
No, I feel like weirdly more confident about what we're doing than ever. I think people need good news right now. Like, people need trustworthy news. It was a bit easier when everything was going up and all the stocks were going up, and all we could do was celebrate new highs and new market highs. But now people more than ever need to lean in, pay attention, and use that information to get back on their feet, or to make what they can out of a pretty shitty situation. So we've seen engagement go up. We've seen a lot of people really reach out, asking us to do more, and it's been very motivating. So I think that anything can happen. I don't want to be too cocky, but we're trying to be careful, and we're hiring people. We're still growing and doing cool things. So right now we're pretty good.
Let's see what we yo. Damn, Manny, yo, curious ass. He said, would you ever do a subscription base since ad sales are generally down during COVID?
That's why we're thinking about new products that we can charge people for. But we don't want to charge for the newsletter. It's the bread and butter of the business right now. It's still working. It's still doing great. We still have a lot of ideas left to put into that. So instead of potentially conflicting with the advertising revenue and charging people for access to content, which for at least the people that read Morning Brew and listen to Morning Brew, we don't hear that they exactly want to pay for free podcast. Like there's so much free stuff out there that it's going to be tough if we start asking people for money. But instead, one thing that we're talking about now is creating an education product where if you want to learn finance or if you want to learn finance in general, you can come to us and pay us money directly the same way you would pay another education platform. We think the MBA is eroding and people are going to constantly want to learn new skills. So why don't we put our hat in the ring and use the relationship that we've formed with readers to make money off of education? So that's one way that we want to make non-ad money, and we're thinking a bit longer term than subscriptions.
Gotcha. And yeah, it's good you mentioned the MBA thing because I think that's the thing that I've had to deal with too. You know, my parents always ask me, you know, what's next when it comes to education, and you know, I personally don't have any interest to, you know, go back to school for an MBA. You know, it is an option, but it's like the benefit of it may not be worth the cost sometimes. So
What
I
do
don't
you
know.
get out of an MBA?
So what?
What do you think you would get out of an MBA?
I don't know, man. I think I'm at that point where like whenever I want to learn, I'm gonna just go and find it out. You know what I'm saying? I think this day and age, there's so many resources out there that a lot of it can be figured out yourself. I will say an MBA does give you a lot of validation, certification, whatever. And you know, if you walk into a room with that behind you, it can help you get in. But I know I'm not convinced enough that I need it. I don't know. Do any of you guys at, you know, I mean, MBA business, do any of you guys at the Morning Brew actually have that?
No, nobody. Maybe one person. I don't think. I'm pretty sure now. Maybe one person, but no. Everybody has undergrad degrees and has been working, and we think that practical experience. We think we can simulate a lot of the best parts of an MBA and not command nearly the amount of cost or time commitment that the traditional takes. So be on the lookout. We're making some moves. It'll be fun.
Got you. And are you guys hiring right now? You said anybody in undergrad, right?
Yeah, we're hiring people. Yeah.
Oh, for real? Hey, yo, whoever in the chat, I think somebody asked that. Y'all looking hey.
Writers, salespeople, bunch of stuff.
Got you. And actually going off of that, so you guys are based in New York, obviously, but are you, like, let's say I'm trying to hire on, do I have to be there with you guys to work for y'all or what?
Oh, we're thinking through that right now. It's a whole new world. We were talking about it this morning, and we don't know the answer. We're gonna figure. We used to be very loyal to hiring people full time in New York City because we liked having everybody around, and it was more fun and engaging. But things have changed, and we got to figure out what our new policy is.
So I got to see y'all every day. Another question from the boy Subby. Aside from better analytics, what is a single feature that a podcast platform could build to better enable creators? Okay.
Oh, wow. Aside from better analytics, I got to think about this one. There's a lot of stuff. There's so many things I want to be able to do. I want to be able to A/B test certain things. We were having a conversation this morning about what to do, and in any other digital platform, you can test two different creatives and see which one people click on more. We do it with the subject lines on our email newsletters, and we make a pretty big difference with the open rate based on what that subject line says. And we want to try the same thing with our episode titles on a podcast. Do you put the guest name? Do you not? Do you ask a question? Do you just put something mysterious? So one of the many features that I really want is the ability to put in two subject lines and see which one people engage with more. So
cool. So A/B testing, basically comparing two different things and seeing the results. And you know, I know this is asked for you, but I think I can speak on this a little bit. Is, you know, I'm just getting into this. I'm seeing how people react to different things I say. And I think it's been interesting what I've learned from the feedback I get. So one example for, I finally dropped on YouTube. So shout out everybody watching if y'all want to watch the previous episodes, Ponyboy Paul on YouTube. But anyway, I saw that like I could post something and put it here and here, but somebody will still ask a certain question because they didn't see where it was at in whatever I posted. So to be specific, I just dropped, a trailer of, an episode, right? And I had in the caption, a link in bio, go to YouTube, right? And somebody they liked that post. They replied to me on my story, but then later they asked, hey, where can I watch the full episodes? So to me, I was like, oh, wow, I really need to make it very clear, what I want you to get from this. And I think, with email newsletters, you guys are kind of like trying to figure out, like, how do we make somebody continue to open up our emails? Is it the subject line? Is it the guest on the podcast? So I think it's always a learning platform, but I always felt like the best way was to really just kind of ask. Like, surveys can, get a little bit, they can be too much, but I think a mini survey, a mini question, something to make the people that are actually on your platform interact and tell you what they want, so that might be something I'll look into too as well.
I completely agree. Definitely, you gotta figure it out and give it a shot.
Honestly, man. And we're nearing towards the our time. I'm gonna give it about 5 more minutes. So what I like to do towards the end is really just kind of, have you kind of speak to, what's on your mind right now. Like, what are some thoughts you would give to our audience? Like, what would you like to say now that you have that platform?
Oh, now that I got the platform, that's dangerous. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking a lot about what's happening right now. Things are changing so fast, and who knows what's going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of cool ideas that are going to come of it. And I think it goes back to like the thing that I was saying earlier about like if it were easy, like everybody else would do it. So it's like finding something that is really interesting that might be hard and just like giving it a shot. So I've got my hands full with this stuff, which I'm very excited about. But whether it's restaurants having to deliver more or media changing or the way work from home is and what you need to work from home best and do a job if you're working on the other side of the planet with your coworkers, there's just going to be so much stuff. And I've got no idea, but I'm excited. It's really engaging. It's like, yeah, it's really easy to be a downer about all the bad stuff that's happening out there, but like, why not look at it as an opportunity and see what kind of opportunities there are. That's what I'm thinking about. And also chilling out a little bit. I think that when I was in New York City, I was running really fast and just going from thing to thing to thing, social, work, personal, like whatever it might be. And I really enjoyed slowing down and just putting into perspective how many of the things that I was doing that I might not have needed to do. So it's nice to loosen up a little bit, not be in such a rush, and hopefully when things do open up, I don't just go right back to how I was doing things.
Got you. And I kind of got 2 questions from that. One is, with the fact that you guys are all kind of working from home in different states, how has the morale been for the team? Like, are there been people kind of getting mad or frustrated? Like, are you guys still able to work efficiently from home?
Well, I think the first part is it's hard to get a full picture of the whole team. So we try and talk a lot, especially like within who's managing people. But when you can't see everybody, you don't talk to everybody on the team. So it's hard to get a pretty accurate picture. But the people that I'm working with, we're doing well. Again, everybody's healthy, everybody's lucky. But we're starting to wear a little bit from the lack of that, lunchtime brainstorm or that, hey, there's a little problem. Let me just stomp it out right here in person and explain it to you person to person. So sometimes things are a little bit harder. I think we're getting better at it. For me, it's not ideal, but again, like life goes on. What are we gonna do about it?
Exactly, man. That's good. And then another thing I had was, kind of going back to your statement on what's on your mind and your thoughts. Appreciate that, by the way. You kind of were looking at things from a kind of a business perspective. How can I utilize this opportunity for something, right? So do you guys feel like, being that business casual is obviously very business minded, do you guys feel like you have to kind of tread on what can we talk about that's happening culturally versus how do we put a business play on it? Like, do you guys try to avoid let's say, controversial topics, or do you just want to keep it to the business aspect? Like, how do you best approach that?
There's a business angle to everything. Like, this is America. Like, capitalism dominates a lot of the decisions that are made for better or for worse. I think worse in some scenarios, which is quite unfortunate. So I think it is our responsibility actually to hit these hard topics head on. And I think some we're gearing up to do that I'm really excited about, that are culturally relevant, like dating. Not exactly a business story, but the way people are dating has changed and will change. And we want to talk about it. We find it really, really amusing, and we want to go to experts and understand what's gonna change. Maybe we'll talk about the apps or where the money's going, but the story will give a very good picture, because we're going to talk to other listeners and say, hey, what have you been doing? How have you been dating since the beginning of March? But then there are other ones that we're interested in that are definitely a lot more controversial, right? Like, you could pick out of a wide swath of topics and be like, hey, like, this is pretty fucked up. Like, why don't you go talk to an expert and help me understand why it's fucked up? So I think we want to do that. We need to get a better way of like getting those topics sourced as well. So when we do it in a responsible way.
Yeah.
And I would say the other unfortunate thing, but it's not going to deter us from making these episodes, is that we've done a few about diversity, and they didn't perform well, and people don't want to listen to that as much. I'm sure the people listening to it, I think, got a lot of value. I sat in on both of those interviews in person before they were published, and I learned a lot about. One was from Reshma Saujani, who does Girls Who Code. The other was Sally Krawcheck, who created Ellevest, which is an investing platform for women. And I learned so much from both of them, but unfortunately it didn't go nearly as viral as the Fat Jewish.
Yeah.
It would be very easy to be like, okay, through that, we're just going to do more Fat Jewish episodes and get more downloads and make more money. But we think it's our responsibility to be like, no, we're going to talk about sustainable investing. We're going to talk about discrimination in the workplace. We're going to talk about all these things. Mm. It's hard, right? Like, we don't know all the answers, but that's the benefit of an interview show, where we can go to people and go to listeners. Like, what do you think? What's the perspective?
Mm. And I appreciate that, man. I think, because I did tune into that episode, I didn't really know what Ellevest was, and I looked it up. It was actually pretty interesting. But I think it's hard right now, because when you think of what's viral or what's trending, it's whatever's going to catch that attention. And sometimes the most genuine things that are trying to do something that, we would all consider positive might not catch the ear. People don't want to listen to it. So, my advice to you guys, keep doing it. I know it's easy to get into that trap that as you scale up, you want to do viral. You want to, who can we bring on that's maybe trolling or, something like that. So I definitely would keep it up. I'm definitely trying to, in my own way, I would say, trying to just show people what's out there and not just stay in one lane. But, I think just keep it up, let people know, actually, I'll actually share those episodes afterwards and just let people know what's out there. But I really appreciate that you guys are willing to go there, especially for, targeting the youth, the people that really are going to make that impact in the next coming years. So,
and if as business questions or episode ideas, message me on whatever platform you can find me. And
let them know. You guys have direct access to Josh Kaplan. He is really making podcast episodes, right? So, read them up, like, hey, why don't you talk about this, this, and this? And, I would say you have a very open air and open mind. So I appreciate you being open to that. And the time is kind of getting to the end of this. Once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to really, spend some time with me. I hit you up a couple weeks ago. I'm like, yo, like, were you down? And then your response was, oh, I've already looked at it. I would love to be on. That made me really feel kind of special and happy that, you guys care that much about it. So, once again, I want to thank you. And also for the raffle, if you guys haven't been paying attention, I'm going to have the episode live. So Josh is going to be giving one random viewer that wins any choice of their from the Morning Brew merch website. So shop morningbrew.com and check it out. But yeah, I'm gonna let you go, Josh, and we'll wrap it up with the rest of the audience. But once again, appreciate your time, man. Hope you stay up, and love to see more episodes from you guys.
Cool. Thanks. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. And thanks,
thanks, man.
Bye.
All right. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in About an hour. I'm gonna wrap it up before we got about 5 minutes left. I want to really appreciate you guys for staying with it. I know it was a kind of business focused episode, but I think there's value in a lot of things that you might not know until you actually pay attention. So I'm always very curious about what's going on and how it's happening. So hearing Josh speak from the actual inside of somebody that's Morning Brew is going to be one of the top business newsletters out there, and they already are, I would say. So it's really cool for him to speak on that. And I just wanted to touch on some things that's kind of been on my mind before the episode ends. So I know with the, I'll say the recent, happenings with the killings, the like riotings and all that, it's been a lot to kind of process. And, somebody actually asked me, and she said, why aren't you using your platform to speak about what's happening, right? And personally, I don't like to just posting just to post, just to feel like I did something. I'm very much about actionable items. So I did like that she, challenged me on using my platform for something. So what I'm looking to do in the next coming days, I haven't set a date. I would personally like to host a Paul and Pal's, discussion episode, really a special episode, just to really talk about what's going on, and let's see if we can make some stuff happen. Because, when there's a lot of emotion, we tend to get lost in that. But I would really like to have people that would like to talk about how they're feeling right now in the moment and see what we can do, and actually keep it up. When the emotion dies down, we can't stop the conversation, So I will be letting you guys know when I get that live date and time set up. Please join in. Please speak your thoughts. Please invite whoever you feel can really speak on it. And hopefully from that, we can make our little dent and make, action items that we can actually start changing our future. Because once again, we're the tomorrow, right? So so that's what I'm thinking. I really appreciate somebody letting me know that I got to use what I got out here for good. So I will try to do that to the best of my ability. And for all those people that are struggling with what's happening right now, I really wish that I could change how you're feeling. But if you ever need somebody to talk to, I'm very open. I really love conversations, if you guys can't tell. So I'll try to do my best. But I'm going to wrap it up. I don't want to lecture you guys. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap it up. Feel free, if you didn't catch the whole thing, check the live recap. Follow for the full episodes on YouTube. Tell your friends. Follow me on IG. And I'm going to see you guys next week. Thanks.